Welcome back to Queen City Corals. It's been about a year since our last store tour and a lot has changed in our store. So I want to take you guys through a little tour of all of the improvements we've made and the changes, as well as what's coming up in the future for Queen City Corals. So without further ado, guys, let's go. All right, so this is our front lobby area where we've got our selection of dry goods as well as frozen foods. We also have these really cool art pieces here that are laser cut and painted with UV reactive paint, so they glow under the blue lights of the aquarium. They look really cool. We've got these available for sale in store, and we've got our little checkout counter here, but the real show is definitely in the back, where I'm going to show you guys all the different tanks we have back here, as well as some of my favorite pieces. So let's go. So our first new tank is right when you first enter the door to the right. This is our new order holding tank, so nothing too exciting. We already had a few tanks, but they just weren't enough space for us, so we had to add this 5-foot by 2-foot tank here, just to help with some of the spillover for the orders that are going out and shipping from online. This tank we just set up about 2 weeks ago, so we're still working on filling it up. We just started putting corals in here today, actually, now that it's nice and cycled. Moved some of our media from our other tanks over, so it helped it cycle a little bit quicker. And we are still waiting on one of the lights, but we've got one of our XR30s on there right now, and we just need the bracket for the other one to get this tank fully operational. Next to this tank, if you've seen our other videos, you've seen this 80-gallon tank. This is definitely one of my favorite display tanks, just because of all the euphilia and the movement and all the different corals in here. We've got chalices, meat corals, mushrooms, frog spawns, hammers, torches, leathers, really all kinds of different corals. We also have some really nice plate corals in the back that I really like. The tank's been doing really well. It's been set up for about a year and a half now, but I think we are going to redo this tank just kind of to mix things up a little bit and get a different look in here, since it's been the same kind of thing for so long. We just want to mix it up and get some new views going. So this is our next system. This is our quarantine system. So all of our new corals that come in, after we dip them and inspect them, you can watch our video on dipping if you want to know about how we go through and dip all of our new corals we get in and how you should dip your corals at home. But after we're done with that, we move them in here where we can watch them, just to make sure there aren't any pests or anything like that, and ensure that they're nice and healthy and open before we move them over into our for sale tanks and photograph them and put them onto our website. All right, so our next system is our SPS Quarantine. It's mostly going to be acroporas. This system is separated from our other quarantine system because we're actually going to medicate and treat these acros, just because there's certain pests on here that, such as white bugs, black bugs, and red bugs, that you can't really get rid of through dipping or scraping and inspecting because they're too small to see. So what we'll do is we'll actually treat this tank and the water in it to ensure that nothing gets into our main SPS system, where we're actually growing corals, acroporas, montiporas, things like that. And this will make sure that everything stays clean in our system, and also allow us to inspect these corals for a little bit longer than we do in our regular quarantine, just because there's a little bit more pests in here. All right, so the next system here is definitely my favorite. It is our SPS system. On this right side, we've got our SPS Growout, and on the left side, we've got our frags. So in this tank here are our frags that we have just recently cut, and they're starting to encrust, as well as colonies that I haven't cut up yet. So usually what I do is I'll keep the acro colonies for about 3 months after they've already been cleaned and everything, and then I'll start to cut them once they're nice and fluffy. And as you can see, these guys are super fluffy and have really great extension. The tenuouses almost look like millies. And in the back here, you can see I've also got some of the euphilia. And this is our little euphilia grow out, just because we're a little limited on space. And this system is definitely one of our larger ones. With these deep blue tanks, I'm able to get a little bit more verticality and give the torches a little bit more space. And then on the right side of that tank, we've got our frags that are available online, as well as some of our clams that are available. And in the back, we've also got that massive frog spawn colony that we've been growing out for a while. That frog spawn colony is one that we've had for about 6 months now, but we actually got it from a customer who sold it to us because it just got too big for their tank. So I've got mostly acros on the left side, and then I've got my Montiporas down low. I've definitely got a soft spot for Montes. They're one of my favorite corals. They have really cool growth pattern as well as some really awesome colors. And then on the right side, I've got some of our bird's nests, including our grafted lazy blue zing bird's nest, some Poeciloporas, some Stylophoras, and some more other oddballs like the cactus pavona, the mint pavona, even a Hadnophora, and a grafted chalice. Basically all the sort of unique stuff that I'm looking to grow out and continue to propagate. All this stuff is farmed, and none of the pieces in this tank really are for sale. I'm trying to grow them all out, even the smaller ones, which are going to take a little bit longer, but it's definitely worth it because they're all higher end pieces that are really nice. So next up here, we've got our rock flower anemone tank. We've got all of our rock flower anemones in here, and this is one of the newer tanks we added. We added it when we added our order holding tank, just to give us some more space for the rock flowers. I think right now we've got about 300 in here, so a pretty good amount. Nice variety of colors. We just did a video on rock flowers that you can check out up here, but these guys are really cool, a lot of color, super easy to care for, and they do well in pretty much any tank. And so here we have our invert system. So we have all of our snails, hermit crabs, things like that in here. We also will sometimes have baskets like this one with a bunch of jawbreakers in it, just because they tend to float off, and they usually do pretty well in the system because we have a little lower flow. And we'll also sometimes have fish like this little foxface here that was nipping on corals in our coral system. So he got evicted from that tank, and now he's over here where we don't really have any corals. But this is a pretty simple system. You've probably seen it in most places. It just keeps all of our inverts separated and with enough water to where they can eat and have enough food for them. And so our next system we're gonna look at is our Eilia system. So this is 3 tanks right here, and it houses mostly our frog spawns and torches, but we also have some other pieces in here. Right here we have our instant gardens, which are pretty popular. It's basically where we take a bunch of different corals and put them all together on a little plug, and then that way you can have a nice little garden of one type of coral that'll grow out and look really cool, kind of growing together. And then in the next tank behind here is going to be our torch tank that you might have seen in some of our other videos. It's full of different torches. And then the final tank over there that we'll show you is going to be kind of a miscellaneous tank. We have ganies in there. We also have a chalice in there and a few other random pieces. It's kind of a holding tank where we have pieces that aren't yet ready to be cut up, or pieces that just got cut up but aren't ready to photograph and put online. And we use it kind of just as extra storage. So this is our online system here. We've got all these corals that are online on our website. This first tank that we're gonna start off with is our hammer tank. So this is where we keep all of our hammers. We mostly have branching hammers, but there are a few walls in here. Tend to lean towards the branching just because they'll usually do a little bit better. They're a little bit hardier, but a lot of people do like the walls just because they're bigger, and some of the colors you can really only find in the walls. We found that especially if the specimen looks healthy, the wall hammers will do just as well as the branching hammers. So it's not too much of a concern for us, but we definitely find that the branchings are more popular because they'll grow a little bit faster and you can actually get more splitting heads and grow that way. Right, so this is the next tank in our online system. This is where we have all of our Gonioporas that are for sale online on this left side, and then on the right rack, we've got some really great beginner corals. We've got Duncans, we've also got some trumpets, some blastos, as well as some clove polyps. All these are really good beginner pieces that you can grab. They're gonna be super easy LPS. The clove polyps are softies, so they're even easier. They're all gonna grow pretty quick, but the clove polyps you just wanna watch out because they can grow very quickly. And I usually recommend putting them on an isolated rock because they can kind of get out of hand. Right, so our next tank here is gonna be our acans on this left side, and then our mushrooms on the right side. This is primarily our low light tank, so if you're looking for more low light corals, the acans I find do really well and actually develop even more colors if they're in lower light, between 50 to 75 par. and they really like to be fed. They'll display much better colors if they're fed. It helps to make up for the energy deficiency that they might experience in lower lighting, but it definitely improves their color. They'll do well in higher lights, but you just won't get those crazy rainbow colors that you see sometimes. And then on the right side are the mushrooms. These guys are some of the hardiest corals in the hobby, and they can sort of take over, but it usually takes them a little while to really start to produce. They'll sometimes split, and sometimes they will actually leave a little part of their foot behind as they slowly move, and that little part of their foot will become its own mushroom, and that form of replication is called budding. And that's how a lot of mushrooms like the discosomas will reproduce. But it is important to note that mushrooms are technically anemones. They're not actually corals, so they will sting other stuff, and especially when they flop out, they can sting corals. And some mushrooms, especially like the fuzzies, when they get really big, I've seen them get as big as like 1.5 feet, they can actually sting fish as well. But that's a little more uncommon and not something I'd worry about unless you're getting a fuzzy mushroom and it happens to get really massive. They usually, even if they do get that big, won't hurt anything. But you do want to be mindful when you're placing these guys. They can get pretty big, and not put them right next to any sort of coral that's going to be stung. And usually I'll keep the mushrooms all together on their own rock, just so that way they don't kill any other corals. All right, so this is our kind of miscellaneous tank. Right now it's mostly chalices. We also have some favias that we are cutting up, some leathers, some elegances. We've got our rainbow chalices, and then we've also got a few 8 cans and a couple mushrooms. This tank used to hold our orders, but we moved them over into the system over there once this became not enough space for us. And so now we kind of just have it filling in with overflow from some of our other tanks. All right, so this is our mostly $15 coral tank. So the vast majority of these corals in here are $15 and under. We also have some of our encrusting corals, so chalices, cyphastrias, stylostenellas, things like that will sort of encrust over the corals. We also have a lot of our favias, and as well as a couple little oddball pieces. For instance, we have some lobos in here, some waving hand anthilia, and a few SPS corals like montes and birds' nests in here as well. So our next tank here is going to be all of our sort of sand-dwelling corals. So this is going to be our cinerinas, our acanthophilias. We also have some Christmas tree worm rocks. We also got a really cool elegance in right now in the back called a Rasta elegans. We also have some Wilsonized, as well as our Trachophilias. A few more meats, of course, the Scolies. Those are definitely some of the most popular ones. We have a couple of really hot looking master Scolies right now. We also have a few other Wilsonized, some button Scolies, plate corals, as well as a few bubble corals. All these guys are going to do really well in lower light, lower flow. They also like a little higher nutrients, and also are going to like to eat. They will eat very well and have a really cool feeding response where they open up all their feeder tentacles and look really cool when you feed them. Our next tank is going to be our Zoa tank. We do also have a few other corals in here, but it's primarily supposed to just be Zoas. But on this left side here, we have some Galaxia, as well as some green star polyp. We have some of the regular encrusting kind, as well as a few of the branching. I really like the branching GSP. It's a little more unique, and you don't see it all the time. And it has a really cool growth structure where it kind of throws out these fingers and starts to grow up rather than just growing across whatever surface it's on, like the normal GSP does. But most of the tank is going to be Zoas. We have all our frags up front, and then we also have in the middle and in the back some of the colonies we haven't cut up yet. These are newer pieces that we haven't conditioned long enough to go into our farm, but ones that we're cutting up to sell as frags. So if you see an E-light back there, we usually always have frags of it up front or in one of our other frag tanks here. All right, so that was the last of our online system. And moving on this back wall, as well as this tank right here, is our farm system. So this is where we farm all of our non-SPS corals. Starting off here, this is going to be most of our Zoas in here. We do have a little bit of spillover in this tank. So we have a few Zoas in here, but this is going to be the rest of our softies. So we have a colony of branching GSP. We also have some black GSP, as well as some Grandis pallies, daisy polyps. We also have a few other pieces like clove polyps. And then we also have some of our Duncans that we grow out here. Some of our other little oddballs, we have a trumpet, some trumpet corals, a leather. We also have some mushrooms in here that we're getting ready to frag up. That's going to be most of this tank here. Right, so this is our Zoa Frag Tank. So this is where we put all of our fragged Zoas that aren't yet online, and we usually put them here to let them recover before we actually photograph them. Also, Zoas like to tend to float off a little bit, so we don't have any power heads in this tank because they'll usually end up floating off if we have power heads on. And so that's why we have this tank, and just because we go through so many Zoas here, they're one of the most popular corals. We need a lot of space for all of our Zoas, especially since we're growing them out. We also have a few other random pieces in here. There's a bower banky, there's also a few chalices, a pectinia, and in the center I have some hammers and frog spawns that are growing out. But really mostly this tank is just for Zoas that we've cut and frags that are sitting in here. So all the frags in here are for sale, but we don't have any of the like bigger colonies for sale. These are just ones we haven't posted online yet, and they're sort of healing up still. Right, so this is definitely my second favorite tank right behind the SPS system. This is kind of my baby right here. This is going to be all of our chalices and encrusting corals. To be completely honest with you guys, it's not the best financial decision to have all these corals taking up an entire farm tank, but I just love them so much. They're really cool. The different chalices, the different encrusters. This is, other than SPS, my favorite type of coral. And I just love having them in here, watching them grow. There's a ton of different colors, and when you really look at them super closely, they're super interesting. And I really just love all the different varieties, and I try to get as many as I can. Whenever I'm at shows or anything like that, I always look for really neat encrusters, just because I've seen so many corals over my years in the hobby. I've been in the hobby for about 8 years now. I've seen so many different corals that these still really excite me. There's still new encrusters that I've never really seen before. For instance, I recently got this really cool grafted Cyphastria that my wholesaler brought in. The first thing he did was let me know he had it because he knows I love the weird stuff like that. So it's a lot of pieces like that that just you don't see all the time, and they might not be super popular, but they're worth it for me to really enjoy the hobby and come into the store and look at corals that I really love to look at, and also just kind of collect. I don't have a ton of space in my tanks at home, but this gives me a space to where I can really have a lot of these unique pieces that I don't have space for. So the last tank was probably my favorite tank in the farm system, but this tank is pretty much everyone else's favorite tank in the farm system. This is our Arani Tank. We have a ton of Ganis that we've been farming out for a while here. Some of them for over 1.5 years, 2 years, really since we started the store. And they have phenomenal extension, and what I really like about this tank is that you can really see that Ganis can grow in a wide range of conditions. I have some of them getting blasted by flow, and some of them have very light flow. Some of them have lower light, some of them have higher light, but they're all growing and doing really well. So it's a good way to see that Ganis can perform well in a wide range of conditions. And another little quirk about this tank is we have a little clownfish in here that likes to host the Ganioporas. They're pretty used to it now, so they don't really close up, but when we first had them in there, they would definitely close up when you'd swim through them. But what happened is they basically got acclimated to them over a while, and now they're perfectly fine with them. So our next tank here is a bit of a mix. So on this side we have our mushroom growout as well as a couple of plate corals. The plate corals are really cool. They're one of my favorites. So what happens with this species when they die is they actually will leave a bunch of babies all around the plate. And what happens is those babies will grow up and get bigger. And these are actually our citrus sky plate corals. We featured feeding them in our How to Feed Corals video. They're really cool and have a nice grouping of colors. And they'll also actually split. So this kind of species of plate coral can split, which is really cool. Then on the right side, we have our Aans. So we have some of our rainbow Aans and Growout, as well as a few Blastos. Then in the center here, we have some of our ultra rock flower anemones. This tank is still building out. We don't have a ton of Aans in here right now, just because we fragged some of them up recently, but we'll be adding more soon and filling this up even more. Right, so our final system is our order holding system. This is where we have all of our orders that we've pulled, people have placed online, either to come pick up locally or to get shipped out. This is the tank where we house them all. They do well in here. We usually keep it lower light and lower flow just to get everything ready for shipping. All right, so if you guys made it this far into the video, you get something not everybody gets to see. This is our VIP back room. No, this is our mess room where we have our mixing containers. So we've got our salt water, our fresh water, as well as our RODI machine, big boy. Our mess of tools that I don't like to show anybody. And then we've got our brand new fish quarantine system. So this is where we're starting to quarantine fish. We're going through a full cycle of copper, any other medications, Prozi, to really make sure these fish are properly quarantined. This isn't going to be where we put them in here for a couple of weeks, make sure they're eating, and then sell them. These are properly quarantined fish where we've made sure that they don't have any diseases. We've treated them. They're currently actually in copper right now, and they'll go through a full course of copper treatment. And then after that, we'll hold them on to them for another 2 weeks, make sure there's no other infections or anything like that. And then once they're done with that, we're going to move them over here into our clean system, where right now we have some captive bred fish. We've got yellow tangs as well as a couple of clownfish that were a special order. So this is our clean system here. And then we've got our medicated systems here, where we have the fish as they're going through quarantine. If you guys are interested in these fish here, this cycle should be done in the next month or so. And these fish will be available starting out in person. And then anything left over, we'll probably start shipping. So we'll have quarantined fish available pretty soon on the website in the next month or so. So make sure to stay tuned for that if you're interested in adding some fish that are properly quarantined and don't have any diseases. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video touring our store. Make sure you guys comment down below which was your favorite coral and which was your favorite system in the store. If you guys want to stay up to date with our channel and see when we release new videos, we're definitely going to have a lot more coming out soon. We're heading up to Reef Stock in Denver, and so we'll have a video coming out there on the corals at that show. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and comment down below anything that you have questions about. If you see any pieces in the video, you can be sure to find them online on our website. We've got about 1,000 what you see is what you get corals available there. And if something isn't on the website, feel free to shoot us a message on Facebook, Instagram. You can text us, email us, whichever one works best for you. And we can see if we can cut the piece or sell you the entire piece that you saw in the video. And I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.